the power of exercise for people with Prader-Willi syndrome. I think this topic, especially the power, suits you very well. When we, Norbert and I, got to know you in 2008 at the first Caregivers conference in Herne, I think we immediately noticed what powerful woman we are facing. And in addition, I don't know any colleague with such a profound knowledge of Prader-Willi syndrome and exercise. And therefore, I think we will now experience this power in your lecture, and we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Hubert. That was a lovely introduction. I think I'll be speaking to the converted tonight, but let's go. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. So yes, I honestly believe that exercise has a wonderful power for everyone, but most especially for people with PWS because of their specific needs. And we know that food is extremely important, and the role that food plays is huge for people with PWS. I'm just going to move that banner. And normally for a healthy lifestyle, we say there's a balance between energy in and energy out. But for people with PWS, it's really important that exercise plays a major role, and that the scales are tipped slightly towards obviously more exercise and well balanced, but probably a little less food. So we just need to go through the physical features of Prader-Willi syndrome to really understand why exercise is so important for people with PWS. We know clinically that they have lower muscle tone, and muscle tone is really gauged by the pathways from the brain to the muscle, but it results in having a lower resistance to movement. They have decreased muscle, a decreased percentage of muscle, and a higher percentage of fat, as we know. And they also have a reduced muscle strength. Now, low muscle tone generally goes with reduced muscle strength, but not always. And it may improve as they age a little bit, but more importantly, what it does functionally, it means that they have looser muscles, so the muscles aren't quite as firm. They don't react to movement as much as a normal muscle will. It leads to less stable joints, so the joints are not protected by the muscles that hold the joints together as much. So it means they have poorer balance. They have a reduced total daily energy output because they have less muscle, because the site of fat burn is generally at the muscle. So yes, they have a reduced fat burning potential, so it means it's quite important the amount of fat they take in. It generally leads to poor posture. It also affects their lungs, so they have a hypoventilation because the small intercostal muscles around the chest are not as strong and not as effective with deep breathing. And if they are obese, on top of that, you've got heavy fat sitting on slightly weaker, less functional muscles. So they have a reduced respiratory fitness as well. It also then means that they have a reduced overall physical capacity. We know they're often prone to daytime sleepiness and possibly sleep apnea as well. So yes, they generally have reduced self-motivation to exercise. Also, we see that they have an increased body fat because they have an unusual body composition with more muscle and less fat. And even with growth hormone, yes, it certainly helps with muscle, probably not to the normal level, but it certainly does help. But then not everyone has growth hormone, unfortunately. So because of their increased body fat, they have an increased capacity to store fat. They gain fat readily, and this leads to an increased cardiac risk because fat deposits are internal as well as subcutaneous. So this increases their ability of obstructive sleep apnea, certainly with weight gain and fat gain. So overall then, they require a reduced energy intake, and which is what we know. However, when you put someone on a diet and they're not exercising, or you reduce their energy intake to lose weight, not only will they lose fat, but they'll also lose muscle. And this is the last thing we want people with PWS to lose. We want them to gain muscle. So managing a healthy lifestyle must include exercise for people with PWS. If you just put them on a diet, they will lose a lot of muscle as well as fat. And we have seen this in adolescents who've come to us whose family have known about Prader-Willi syndrome, known about the hyperphagia, and been very restrictive with food intake, whether they've been on growth hormone or not. And they've turned up very slim with very slim muscles. And because they look slim, the family thinks, oh, they don't need a lot of exercise because they're in good shape. Well, they're not. They just physically look as though they're not obese. And then physiologically, yes, we know that they have a hypothalamic, either increased hunger or decreased satiety or a bit of both. So there is this constant food focus and the overeating if food is available. They have a reduced hormonal maturation, basically meaning that their sex hormones are not as productive as in a normal person or a person without Prader-Willi syndrome. And this naturally puts them at the risk of osteoporosis. Now, bones that don't carry a lot of weight on them are also at risk of osteoporosis. So in one way, obesity protects bones, but that's not what we want to see. Growth hormone will certainly help a little bit more because they're given, it helps with muscle bulk, and muscle is heavier than fat. So that puts a greater weight through the bones. But if they're brought up to be very slim, again, whether they're on growth hormone or not, it increases this risk of osteoporosis because there's not enough impact going through the bones and not enough weight going through bones. And they don't have strong enough muscles that are working bones. So that also reduces bone health and the bone turnover, which keeps bones strong. We know they desire sameness. Yes, people with PWS don't particularly like new interventions, and they don't like doing things differently from the way they've been doing it. They like consistency, which is a positive in one way. So the more regular exercise is completed with them, the greater the compliance will be, and the more they become used to the exercise so that it becomes part of their life. And this is what it's all about. It's so important. It needs to be a part of their life from a very young age. So the importance of the exercise is for musculoskeletal improvement, for muscle strength, joint stability, bone density, to help a young child achieve motor milestones at a more normal rate. Obviously, weight management is important, but it's not the be all and end all as the main reason for the importance of exercise. Exercise certainly improves cardiorespiratory fitness because you're strengthening not just the intercostal muscles, but you're increasing blood flow and increasing the oxygen that's sent through to every cell in your body through exercise. It also improves vascular health. It improves mood, and we see this greatly now. There are not a lot of studies done in people with Prader-Willi syndrome looking at all these aspects. Certainly there are some in a lot of them. But we know that exercise increases the release of endorphins and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is extremely important. And now we're being told that exercise helps with the increase of cannabinoids. So endorphins are fabulous for relaxation, for decreasing stress, for overall feeling of well-being and improved mood. And we know that BDNF, this brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is really important for memory, improving memory, attention span, decision-making, and also for brain tissue repair. Whether it's exactly the same in people with PWS, we don't really know yet. There's not enough studies. There aren't any actually, as far as I know. But we certainly know that the mood of people who exercise regularly when they have PWS certainly improves, just as it does in the non-PWS population. And the big one that is often probably not given as much attention as it could have is exercise provides a distraction from the focus of food. And this is a really important thing. It also provides routine into their day. And within that routine, you have a certain period of time where they might be thinking about doing the exercise, but they are distracted from food completely while they are doing it. Now, we'll come to something else to do with that. Okay, so exercise also improves obesity-related comorbidities. So if you have someone who is obese, exercise improves your body's sensitivity to insulin, and we have certainly seen this in people with Prader-Willi syndrome. So despite weight loss, if they are exercising regularly and effectively, and that's a key word that I'll come back to, their own personal insulin sensitivity is improved. So it's a little bit hard to see here, but it basically means before a training program and then after a training program that their glucose uptake is much improved because the insulin is working so much better within their body as a result of regular exercise. And there are plenty of studies in the non-PWS population looking at this, and there are some within PWS. It certainly improves hypertension. It certainly improves circulation, and we know that the flow of blood can be improved from 4 to 7 mils per 100 grams of tissue up to 50 to 70 mils per 100 gram of tissue. And the amount of oxygen going to the brain can be increased by about 30% through effective exercise, and basically it's aerobic exercise we're talking about. And it certainly helps improve hypoventilation, because when people are exercising at an effective rate, they have to breathe more deeply. And of course, with the reduction of weight, you will have an improvement in the obstructive sleep apnea. Exercise is perfect for edema and lymphedema. It is the best tool that you have to treat these things. It also helps improve hypercholesterolemia, and this has also been proven in both populations. So through exercise alone, we know very much that exercise increases our high density lipoproteins, which is the good cholesterol that takes cholesterol plaques from our arteries back to the liver. And exercise also now, this has been known for a long time about the improving of the HDLs, but the low density lipoproteins, which are the bad cholesterol that take fat into our arteries, also decreases with regular effective exercise, and triglycerides are also decreased, which are our free-flowing fatty acids. So this is just an enlarged version of the results from this study. It's an old study, but it just shows it beautifully that after just 12 months of exercise, the total cholesterol is decreased, the LDLs are drastically decreased, and the HDLs are increased, which is great. Okay, so what picture are we trying to form? The exercise needs to be regular. There are a couple of schools of thought about that, but I probably say it needs to be 5 to 6 days per week. I suggest there's 1 day off for tissue repair. Not everyone agrees with me, but that's fine. We're talking about different types of exercise. So aerobic exercise, definitely, that's using our large muscle groups, and also strengthening exercises. And these can be combined so that you're strengthening while you're doing aerobic exercise. You generally start, if the person is not exercising, at a low intensity, and you build it up to a moderate intensity. It needs to be incorporated into the daily routine so it fits into what they are doing and becomes part of their life. It can be performed one-to-one in a group. Try to make it fun, and also include incidental activities. So going from A to B, go the long way around, walk if you can, that type of thing. And also just to know that it's definitely not an optional extra. Just going back to the incidental, people with Prader-Willi syndrome aren't sick unless they are sick for a particular reason, but there's nothing to stop them doing chores, making their bed, hanging up, washing on a clothesline so it gets them to stretch up. All these things are exercising muscles of our body that hold us together. So where do we start? In childhood, sensory motor stimulation is extremely important. So this is different touch, putting weight through joints that are stabilized, different sensations. It might be neuroelectrical stimulation pads that help children walk, stimulating their muscles while they're walking. The importance is, the need is for good joint alignment when they're weight bearing, if their muscles are not strong enough. Supported weight bearing, so that they're putting weight through their arms and their legs to try and improve their gross motor skills and their coordination, and for a better achievement of motor milestones. Not all people with PWS achieve their motor milestones later. A lot do, but they don't have to. And there are lots of really good programs starting from a very young age with kids with PWS that just help them improve to achieve these motor milestones almost at the same level of a non-affected person. As we know, bubs with PWS are very floppy. This little girl has done lots of different types of exercise, and here she is swimming and working with an OT. So that's what I'm talking about. For children, it's physical therapy or physiotherapy, which whatever it is called in your country, occupational therapy. So physio, occupational therapy, getting people to sit, stand, etc. And of course, speech therapy, because the orofacial muscles also have lower tone and are weaker and are less. So stimulating and exercising speech therapy is a therapy that actually, the three of these therapies can be done from childhood all the way through to adulthood. And now with our National Disability Insurance Scheme, we have adults who are going back and having speech therapy again, and certainly having physiotherapy or working with exercise physiologists. So physical fitness can certainly be fun, especially for children, and that's what's so important. And we have some wonderful children here who you may recognise, lovely Toby, and all of the things he's doing are exercising. He's swimming, playing around in a pool, working with a physiotherapist, riding a tricycle, which is fabulous, walking over uneven surfaces, which is extremely important for balance, for stimulating the muscles of your feet, which we tend to forget about because they carry the whole of the weight of your body. And walking on soft sand is a fabulous form of exercise. And walking through areas where you have to really be careful with your balance and turn your body and do different things. So not just on even surfaces. And here he is riding a push bike, a two-wheeler bike, which is fantastic. A lot of kids with PWS don't get to that point. Okay, and he's working with others. All right, so during adolescence and adulthood, we get much more into strengthening muscles and into fitness. So it's to improve physical capacity so that people with PWS don't just sit a lot, because they will, because as I said before, exercising is hard work when you have weaker muscles. The aim is to prevent and certainly manage, if you need to, comorbidities that are weight related. Weight management will always be on the cards, even if the person is on growth hormone. Working towards improving bone density. Unfortunately, I have seen many young adolescents with quite severe osteoporosis because they have done very, very little exercise, despite the good weight that they are showing. Probably they're underweight in many cases. And well, we've talked about this. So the same things, the same reasons, mood and reduction of boredom and food focus is extremely important, especially in the adolescence years and of course adulthood. So getting started. If they haven't exercised, you might again start at a lower level, but build it up fairly quickly to at least 20 minutes per session. And it could be twice a day when it's only 15 or 20 minutes. You add to the workout time, so you always have a warm up and a cool down, and then you have the workout time where the intensity increases gradually. You might work with a physical therapist or a personal trainer as they become older. Again, the incidental activity is extremely important. Parking the car further away, walking or cycling rather than traveling by car. I know this is very, very common in Europe. It's starting to become a little more common in Australia, but we could do a hell of a lot better with more cycleways. Using stairs rather than the lift or travelator. The old adage of if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, it's so true. It's so important not to think, oh, they're tired, or, you know, my child has Prader-Willi, let's take the easy way. No, you've got to work these muscles all the time and keep them going. And physically active outings. I must say, kids who are born into families where parents and siblings are very active certainly seem to do a lot better when it comes to liking exercise. So effective exercise. We talk about firstly about aerobic exercise, which is using large muscle groups and a greater exchange of oxygen for the capacity. So we aim for 30 to 60 minutes, 5 to 6 days a week. Ideally do it before a meal or snack, if possible, so that they're just naturally rewarded, not an additional meal or snack, but naturally rewarded with their planned meal or snack. It needs to be supported or supervised, if you want to call it that, but just to say, hey, Barbara, go and get on your cross trainer, wouldn't really work. She you need to make sure that she's doing it at the right speed and that she's just not stopping and standing there. And the same with the treadmill. So many of my guys where caregivers say, just go and get on your treadmill now. They pop their feet on the sides and let the treadmill go round and round. And sure, the timer works really well, but they're not getting any of the exercise. And as soon as the carer comes in, their feet are straight back on the treadmill. Not that I'm saying Toby would do that. Okay, so in a lot of our group homes, we have 2 sets of exercise equipment so that it's not the carer just standing over watching the person with PWS exercising or supervising. I much prefer the word supported. So in some of our group homes, it's a bit of a competition. So the staff member uses one piece of equipment while the person with PWS uses the other, and then they swap over or they compete. So I'm not saying you have to have exercise equipment in the home, but it is certainly easier to make it a more regular part of their day if the exercise is readily available. And if that means having equipment, well, then that's extremely helpful. So types of aerobic exercise include walking, whether it's outside, on the beach, on a treadmill, cycling or using an air walker or a cross trainer, swimming, water exercises are fabulous. However, you're not getting the weight bearing benefit, but they are extremely important and they're good fun. Dancing is a fabulous form of exercise. Using video games, there are so many things now. There's the Nintendo, it's gone right out of my head, but there's Just Dance, there's a Nintendo wheel you use, and there's so many of these that are very interactive because the person can't move to the next level unless they've completed all the tasks they need to do. We found these extremely helpful during COVID. I had a lot of people doing a Just Dance program, and others were doing different games. And yes, try to encourage your person with PWS to get involved with sport and play. I know they're quite often not picked for teams because they might be a bit slower, but keep pushing. So the intensity of the exercise should be to the point where you can see that they're looking hot and puffed and sweaty, but certainly not exhausted, because if you overdo it, it's going to be very difficult to get them back to do it again. And they don't need to overdo it. You just need to see that they're breathing faster than normal at rest time, that they're puffed. They might get a bit sweaty, and most of them do sweat, the people that I see exercising effectively, and they will appear hot. They may not be able to tell you they're hot, but they will appear hot to you. And this means that they're actually exercising at a level of aerobic capacity that is also going to improve cardiorespiratory fitness and burn fat. Then we talk about strengthening exercises. So strengthening exercises are all about exercising specific muscle groups, and it might be using weights or using your body as the weight. They can be resisted arm exercises, resisted leg exercises, weight bearing exercises. As I said, walking over uneven ground, rock walking, bushwalking, really important. Don't forget about the upper body and the trunk. It's so important to remember to improve posture by strengthening upper body and trunk muscles, which was pointed out in the last week's talk. I just often suggest get a basketball, throw a basketball against a wall, throw a basketball through a hoop, hang washing on the line, throw a basketball back and forth to someone, but something simple and easy that can be done 5 to 6 days a week. Going up and down stairs. Now, stairs are a fabulous form of exercise. There are plenty of studies that tell us that people who have stairs in their home live a lot longer. And it's the same for people with PWS. Using stairs is fabulous for strengthening calf muscles. Now, I'm showing you this young man here. He has never been on growth hormone, and some of you may have seen this picture before. He played tennis from the age of about 8 and still plays, but he does a lot of rock walking. He's a fisherman, so he does a lot of rock fishing, and he fishes when he's standing up in a boat that's swaying back and forth, and also he hits the streets. Now, he doesn't have the best of health. He has diabetes, but he does have beautiful muscles and never been on growth hormone. So it does tell us that people with Prader-Willi syndrome can certainly build up their muscle through exercise. His muscles probably look a hell of a lot better than a lot of people who don't have Prader-Willi syndrome who exercise. So I'll just show you that. So there is strengthening exercises here that people can do. They can use plastic water bottles. We used to have a series of exercises where instead of using hand weights, because they are very hard if they're thrown and they can smash windows. So plastic water bottles full of sand or water, just a simple weight that they can use with their arms. But think of all these things that are so simple, but make a huge difference. As I said, hanging out, washing, cleaning, tidying their room. So just to show you two of our fellows exercising. This young man actually lost 63 kilos over 2 years by exercising for the first time in his life and got it up to 6 days a week. And he'd even go and exercise on the 7th day because he enjoyed it so much. But he had an episode of regain, but now he's losing it all again. So he's done extremely well, but exercise is a huge part of his life. So we don't forget about warming up and cooling down. These are slow rhythmic movements or stretches. It doesn't matter. It can be exercising with the same exercise. So you can be walking slowly and then get into a good brisk walking pace that's going to be achieve your workout. And this is the section, the workout part, that you increase. But warming up and cooling down just 3 to 5 minutes before the workout and at the end of the workout is all to prevent soft tissue injury like pulled muscles, strained muscles, and to prevent sudden changes in blood pressure. Now, this is extremely important if the guys are using exercise equipment. So if they're walking on a treadmill, and I'll show you someone in a moment who runs on a treadmill, and they just stop it automatically, there'll be quite a drop in blood pressure and they'll feel quite dizzy, and that's when you can have injuries. So warming up and cooling down are really important. They don't have to be difficult. They don't even have to be stretches, but they do need to be included. Don't forget to remind the person about good posture, just as you would a child who is growing up. You'd say, don't put your elbows on the table, sit up straight. Thinking about people with PWS who have lower muscle tone, they tend to slouch. Some of them have really low muscle tone where they almost slide off the chairs. But reminding them to lift their head up when they're walking and talking, just as you would an older child. Keeping a straight back, walking tall, feeling proud, looking where they're going, sitting up straight in the chair, and as I said, elbows at table height to strengthen back muscles, to strengthen neck muscles. Okay, I'm just showing you this graph of two people who came to see me. They lived in supported residential services that were not Prader-Willi specific. This is quite a while ago. I've been working with people with PWS for just over 30 years. And these guys came probably within the first 10 years. And so they were in separate homes, different homes, and the staff were fabulous. They took on all the suggestions about food changes and about monitoring the food they were eating. And they both lost weight very nicely. A few hiccups along the way. But at this point in 2005, this house, and then again in it was in the middle of 2007, they finally got funding for treadmills or exercise equipment. They actually had 2 treadmills in one of the houses and a treadmill and an exercise bike in the other one. This house had 2 people with Prader-Willi syndrome living in it, but these guys had never exercised regularly in their lives. They used to walk a bit around where they lived, but they both lived in country areas, but exercise was never part of their life. And they started out at pretty high weights when they came to us, so 155 and 143. Once the treadmills were in place, they were then exercising 6 days a week. They built up to it slowly, as I suggested in the earlier slide, but they built it up to 6 days a week. And it was in this house where the staff would always compete with Scotty. Anyway, they over a period of time, and it was prolonged and it was continual. And this is the best thing. The exercise really promoted continual healthy improvement in fitness and weight loss. So Scotty ended up losing over 80 kilos and David lost a huge 86.6 2.3 kilos in that period of time. So they were extremely, their lives changed completely. When this fellow first came in, he walked down our hallway and he had massive lymphedema and his legs were dripping. So he had a bit of cellulitis there, but you know, just dripping fluid. It was horrendous. Now, I just move this over. Professor Prader at one stage said the measure of an individual with Prader-Willi syndrome correlates with body weight. Now, for these guys, it was a huge measure of their individual freedom, of their freedom, because he ended up getting a job and he'd never worked before in his life. And I remember having a discussion with his father, I rang him to ask if he would mind if we started introducing, it was a particular program. It was to do with exercise, but it wasn't the treadmill, it was something else. And he said, oh, if you think you can help him, whatever you can do, that'll be fine, you know, because I don't think there's much hope. Well, we certainly proved his dad wrong, because he did extremely well. He was working and so proud of it. This guy, again, changed his life completely. He started to attend a day program regularly. He started to access the community, which was something he wasn't doing at all. So this was a long time ago, and they were non-PWS group homes, but they both managed to do extremely well. Sadly, one of them died at the age of 45, but before that, they were very fit. Okay, so we're not moving. All right, so now I'll just show you another young man and his exercise routine. Now, this young man was on growth hormone only for about 6 years. He's about to restart it. He's now 28, but he has exercised throughout his life from about the age of about 8 when they first came out to Australia. And he is very proud of the way he looks. You can see that he doesn't have fabulous muscles in his legs, not like my previous fellow. But Cade is adamant that exercise is a major part of his life. He's fortunate he has quite active parents, but he lives in a group home, and his exercise regimen is extremely important to him, and it's the one thing that he has never given up on in the whole time I've known him, and I've known him since he was about 14. He's now 28. So this is his weekly routine. He does Muay Thai, which is a form of jiu-jitsu, or he was doing Special Olympic swimming, or he was dog walking, and he'd do an hour on Monday. And then on Tuesday, he goes to the gym and he does weights. Wednesday, he does the treadmill at home. The gym obviously had to slow down because of COVID. So no, he was not going to the gym at all, but he was using the treadmill at home then. So the treadmill at home is his backup. If it's raining, that's what he does. And then he does dog walking. Again, that was slowed down with COVID, but he's back to doing that again now. And he did this tough class, which was like an aerobics class using different types of equipment in the gym, but very fit. So he exercises 6 days a week in most cases. That'll change a little bit. He's just moved. So as many people say, how do you motivate someone to exercise when they have Prader-Willi syndrome? Yep, it's not easy, but it takes persistence on your part, because the motivation starts with you. So many people will say to me, oh, they're lazy, or they just don't want to do it. They don't like it. You know, they're not motivated one bit. And I say, yeah, that's fine. But, you know, the motivation starts with you. You're the one, you know, this is your job. So this is a very simple thing that I think some of you have seen before. And I use the red cups only because they're little fish that swim around looking for food all the time. But it's just a way to remember what we're talking about here. So the R is for respect. Obviously, we have to respect the person, which goes without saying, but we also have to respect what Prader-Willi syndrome brings to that person and their life. And we have to be aware of the way they think, the way they don't like change, the way they like to please you. All these things come into how you can motivate them. C is for challenge. Most people with Prader-Willi syndrome love a challenge. They don't necessarily like being told what to do, but they certainly like to be challenged. And that's how the guys with the treadmills first started out. Their staff challenged them, said, I reckon I could do 5 minutes. Do you think you could do 5 minutes? And then it built up from that. So it started very slowly, but they kept challenging them. They love a challenge. They like to prove to you that they can do something, but they also like the fact that you think they can do something. A is for a quiet agreement. I'm a big one for trying to have them think that it's their idea or that they've agreed to do something. So again, I might say, gee, you know, I think if you could just, what do you think about exercising twice a day now that you're doing 15 minutes? If you do that twice a day, I think that's going to get an extra kilo off. What do you think? Or similar things to that. Just instead of just telling them, I just say, let that sit with you for a while and you think about it. Responsibility. All people like responsibility, and it's no different for people with PWS. They love to think that you think they are capable of doing something, and giving people with PWS responsibility within our clinic seems to be one of the basic things that works more than anything. Could be something very simple. It could be getting out the exercise equipment, putting the exercise equipment away, anything like that. But letting them know that you believe they're very capable of doing things and doing things well. And doing things well comes down to rewards. Rewarding jobs achieved, rewarding walking around that park 4 times, or rewarding being able to walk without sitting down, simple things. Praise where praise is due. Obviously, if it's false praise, they will see straight through you and that you will have done your dash by then. But praising them for good work, praising them for getting to the end of getting to the end of where you want to go, praising them for hanging out there, washing, simple things. And of course, security. We all aim to have a secure environment for our people with PWS. As long as they feel secure with you and that believe in the fact that you believe they are capable of doing it, or believe in the fact that what you're asking them to do is something you believe in yourself, then you're providing a secure environment for them. And I don't just mean somewhere so they're not going to fall over. I don't mean security as in preventing injury. I mean a secure environment where they feel respected, where they feel praised, where they feel acknowledged. And this is what it's all about, trying to create the best environment for someone with PWS to achieve the goals that they are certainly capable of achieving. So just looking at a group of very active people with PWS that I know. Maya loves horse riding, cycling, kayaking, and here she loves surfing. Now, this is a very famous beach on the south coast called Prader-Willi, and Maya's grandparents lived there. So I mentioned that for one of the people in our audience. So she, at this age, she was about 7, and she didn't get up on the board standing on her feet, but she certainly lay flat on her tummy to surf in. It's quite a gentle beach, but it's a great place for beginners surfers. David is a great bushwalker. He also has beautiful calf muscles and has never been on growth hormone. Barbara uses her cross trainer 6 days a week, as I mentioned, without fail. Lovely young Toby is extremely active in many different ways. Cade loves to go in races in the city to surf that we have in Sydney, where you run from the city out to one of the beaches, and he does that most years. So exercise can be lots of fun. It can be a very enjoyable part of life, but more importantly, it has great power to improve fitness and to improve health and to improve overall feelings of well-being. It definitely works. Thank you. There are a few references here. Some of these are very good. There's some with children, talking about exercise with children and also with adults.